I just wanted to know how you guys first met and started collaborating in this context, because I know it was really a joint effort when it comes to the writing and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on, Com.
we always take it in terms with this questions. Who does the autobiography? And Mick's done the last few. Mick, I'm very happy to do it. You do a very good, concise one.
No, so I mean, it's very similar. I mean, me and Konrad, we met at university in 2007, when I was the year above me. We spent a lot of time doing absolutely nothing at university. Where it wasn't the most productive time, even though we went to pretty good university. And then, like, we got to the end, and we sort of had that panic you get when you realize everyone has a job but you don't. So we gravitated towards finance because it felt like loads of people were doing it, and there were sort of certain pressures in our lives, and it was a big shiny job that made us feel like adults, and we went into it. And I lasted for about a year, and Konrad lasted 3.5 years. After I left, I made this like short film based sort of in part on my experiences in finance, and I just put it on YouTube and got some bars and sold it to NBC, and like got an agent, and suddenly I was like, wow, this is like a viable career option. Because at that time, I've got an immigrant mother, so does Konrad, and the idea of me saying I want to become a writer was just like something she did not understand at all. So then I wanted to work with Konrad, and I sort of was trying to drag him out of the bank, which he was still at, and we started writing this show together, which is basically set in the world of finance, which was very, very different to what industry actually ended up being. But it sort of proved that we could write together and work together and enjoy each other's company in that space. So then we pushed that aside, and we worked on a number of things for a time, and we worked on other people's shows, and we developed and stuff. Then we were working for this production company called Bad Wolf, and this producer called Jane Tranter, and she discovered that we were ex-bankers, and she said, have you ever thought about writing in this space before? And we had, obviously, and without not that much degree of success. And she said, have you thought about writing from the perspective of the young people in it, the people with the least amount of power, the people at the very bottom, which is me and Konrad when we started the show, started working in that industry. And that was the key that unlocked it, really. I mean, we really wanted to write a relationship drama, like a character-driven relationship drama. And setting in that world has made a lot of sense. So the universality of having your first job is, I think, relatable to many, many people. And the fact that it's set in a bank is obviously a very specific and rarefied world, but hopefully there's some relatability and resonance for other people.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to Myhala on Friday, and she was kind of saying how the graduate setting was sort of a great equalizer for all these people from all different walks of life. Was that you guys' actual experience, or was that something to kind of push a relationship drama type thing? Was it
they're quite, I mean, the thing about them is they're seen, I mean, the landscape of a trading floor or a graduate class when I was doing it and Mickey was doing it in 2013, and it's probably true, 2010, it's probably true now as well. I mean, they're very, the criteria they're picking people on is very much, it is kind of actually a bit of a meritocracy in terms of grades and ability, and they're very naturally and organically diverse places. That's what I found in my experience of it, in terms of, and super international as well. But I mean, the thing that we were interested in was not the point at which you're brought through the door, but just the months after that, and kind of unpicking that meritocracy thing a little bit, because what you inevitably find is that you're told that it's a level playing field, but in picking 5 characters who run the gamut across everything, really. I mean, socioeconomic difference, racial difference, class difference, gender difference, sexuality, everything. We wanted to kind of by looking at this world through bottom up, but through those specific lenses, we thought we could find a kind of something that was inherently dramatic, but also it was a nice exploration of the different ceilings that these characters come up against over the course of their first few months to the bank, and the different ways they're willing to kind of make trade-offs with themselves, with other people, in terms of how they might go about breaking through those ceilings, and if they can at all, to be honest.
Is there like a particular reason y'all had like an American female at the head, like this does not being from the country at all, just an outsider in that
It's
sense?
Yeah, it's weird. Me and Mickey are really, really drawn to outsider stories, fish out of water. We really love Harper and Ken's relationship, and they both feel like very foreign entities in this British trading floor. You know, the truth of it is, so we had a writer's room for about 2.5 years ago on this show, and we had this brilliantly talented writer called Nia DaCosta, who has gone on to magnificent things because she's far more talented than either of us. And she, you know, her voice and her kind of inflection and the way she's just a fantastic person, like really funny, very dry, very super engaged, and obviously wonderfully creative. And you know, when we were talking about the character of Harper, and like, you know, she spent a lot of time in London herself, Nia, and you know, if we found ourselves more and more when Nia had left the room to go on to conquer the world, we just found ourselves writing a little bit towards that voice, to be honest. And also, I mean, Mahala is a super intelligent person, super, you know, and also the sort of actress who like is, you know, very, you know, we had a very collaborative relationship with her and all of the young cast. And she brought, I mean, so much of Marisa, who plays Yasmin, and Mahalo, who play Harper, they brought so much of themselves to those characters. So it's very hard for us when we watch and edit the show to kind of to see where one ends and the other begins. And I think what that gives is like a real naturalism and like a real, you know, I think regardless of what you think about them as people or their decisions, you can't kind of help but empathize with them because they play it so naturally.
Definitely. I feel like with the trading floor, there's a lot of dense language and stuff that not everyone might understand. There's some stuff that I was like, I don't know what this is about. But how were you guys able to make this like accessible? Because it still felt like I understood what was going on, if that makes sense. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, but what were the steps you guys kind of took to make it like, you know, an accessible kind of plot with all, this industry that's not everyone's really had access to in a deep kind of way?
It's if we did it successfully, I think that's I'm really glad to hear that, because it was a bit of a challenge. And like obviously Konrad and I, we came from that world, to like our base level of knowledge about those kind of things is obviously, you know, far greater than the average viewer who's watching it. And like it was a dialogue with HBO and the other producers about how much technical language to put on screen. And we really didn't want to we didn't want to look down on the audience. We didn't want to treat them like they were stupid, but also the same fact was we wanted to make it accessible. I think the case in point, I think the way that the best version of that is episode 4, where a lot of the dialogue is unintelligible. Like a lot of people have said to us, like, is she buying sterling or dollars? Or like, I'm not really sure what she's doing, but I can tell that she's very stressed and she's hungover. She's come into work in her first job and she's made a terrible mistake and she's trying to fix it. And that's the sort of universality of what we're trying to do in the episode. And like, so that's when we do it successfully. And hopefully people can relate to the small moments that happen to Harper and the other characters in the office, and how they feel big for them, because they are big for them, and they feel like
Totally. Totally. I'm also, I don't know about you, I'm one of those guys who who loves, I'm trying to think of a good example of this, but I can't really think of one. I mean, I guess The Wire is a bit like this, and a Deadwood is a bit like this. But I love those shows that kind of like, they almost have their own vernacular. They kind of have their own language to them, and it's kind of like, you know, it's to me suggests a kind of authorship, and as Mickey says, it suggests treating the viewers with respect, showing them a world they've not really seen before. And so I think on some level, that is, I'm just talking about myself as a TV viewer. I find that really satisfying when writers just kind of allow you a kind of peek behind the curtain like that, I think.
In terms as well as like a world that people don't really understand and like could actually feel quite cold. Like obviously we're aware that like people will come to this show with like expectations about what people who work in finance are like. And I mean, like some of those expectations are valid because there are people that are like that. But I feel like what we tried to do was show the humanity in it a bit, and like show that there are people who are deeply flawed, especially young people who are deeply flawed, working in this environment, and like present them with as much warmth at points as we possibly could to sort of crack open that sort of the world, which could obviously, you know, in other things feel quite cold.
Definitely. On the topic of like episode 4, that was definitely the most stressful TV experience I've had in a while. But with that, were there any times where you guys like really drew from personal experiences to kind of frame the episode plot, or were they kind of just things you observed or while you guys were working in the industry?
Definitely made a lot of mistakes, and probably not at that higher level. I mean, like, so for me, actually, it's the mistake that Hari makes in episode 1, which is closest to my experience, like the messing up with the font and like feeling like at the time, like it's like when I think about that time when that era felt like the world was ending and caving in for me. Like it feels like we're looking at a different person. Like that was your concern. That's what really, that's the thing that you were sort of like incredibly upset about. But yeah, I'm sure Konrad feels like he's made a few mistakes when
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like a lot of it is drawn from our personal experience, and then there's stuff that's obviously fictionalized and sensationalized a little bit to I mean, that non-farm payroll trading era. I mean, the reality of that, could almost 100% happen to somebody. I've never seen it happen to anybody, but I know people who've misbooked things, and I know people who've had to trade their way out of positions and stuff. So we were just kind of smashing all of the bits of our experience together and try and tell as you said, you had a very vicariously stressful time watching it. And like, we were just, that's all we were going for really, was to try and get that viewer as engaged in what was going on as Harper was.
I loved how the cast of graduates they're all kind of relatively unknown on a grander scale. And this is probably the biggest projects that a lot of them have been a part of. Was that intentional? Did you want people, any names, or were you kind of like, or did you guys have a say in the casting, I guess?
Totally. I mean, it was very much intentional. Like, just practically, we didn't want people to be distracted by people they recognized. We wanted it to feel quite verite and naturalistic. And like, if you were seeing like these really big actors doing these roles and pretending to be scared for their first job, I don't think it would have rung that true, even though they're obviously amazing actors, could have done that. We also just wanted the actors to project some of that insecurity and fear into their performances. There are certain scenes where you have characters walking onto the trading floor for the first time, and like, I think some of the fear in their eyes is actually genuine, because they're working onto in some respects, in some instances, these actors were walking onto set for the first time in their first job. Also, just like the youth of the actors, like there could have been a version of the show where we cast like 28-year-olds to play 21-year-olds, and we just wanted everyone to feel really, really young. And so that sort of, so that when you look at Harper talking to Eric, there's a real generational gulf between them, and it feels like the one that's older than the other, and it feels like one of them could be the mentor to the other
one. What are you guys most anxious to hear a response from? What aspect of the show are you guys kind of like looking for an audience feedback on, if there's any?
That's a really good question. It's funny. I hope that people don't take it the wrong way. I hope that people don't see it as like, from either side, seeing it as a sort of didactic trap on what finance is like and what me and Konrad's take on the industry is like, because that's not what we intended for it to be at all. I think hopefully we intended it to be sort of energetic and fun and with something to say and something to, a sort of a universal take on what it's like to be in your first job, and like some of the challenges of that and some of the challenges of the workplace in 2020. But hopefully people don't watch 8 hours of it and say, oh God, those guys are really, really pro-finance or anti-finance or anything really.
Yeah. I'm just sort of like, I think there's a possibility it splits opinion in quite a big way just in terms of the world that we've rendered. But like, my favorite thing is just hearing people, and we've heard a bit of this from various festivals and stuff, just hearing people say that they couldn't wait to watch the next episode. I mean, for me, in the current television landscape, I can't really name very many shows where I'm like, God, I've got to watch the next thing. So there's the idea that it has a kind of addictive quality to it, or a Moorish quality, where you're like, God, get me back into Pierpoint for episode 5. That's kind of exciting to me. But you can't. I mean, go on. Sorry.
This is something that I don't know about you, Con, but like, having watched all the episodes so many times during the post-production process, like, there's just something that you forget that potentially might be quite addictive. because
No, totally. I actually, funnily enough, I actually binge watched the. I don't know why I did this because I have seen them 200 times, but I watched 6 episodes this weekend, which tells you how active my social life is. And I almost had a bit of distance, and it was a far more enjoyable experience than it was during post. And I think, you know, with the soundtrack and the sound design, the episodes have scrubbed up really well, and I think people are going to enjoy it. I really hope so, anyway.
Yeah, I felt lucky I got all 4 episodes at once because I can't imagine what the process is going to be like a week and everything. But I thought it was cool how Lena Dunham directed an episode, a fellow HBO kind of creator. How was it like collaborating with her and having her, you know, dictate what you guys were putting on the page?
She was really great. I mean, like, we've said this in the past, that she was an absolutely massive influence on our writing. Like, Girls, when me and Konrad started writing together in 2014, and that's when Girls was sort of like the peak of its powers in the culture. And like, you know, we hadn't seen some of the stuff that was on TV, that she put on TV before. And like, I couldn't believe some of those episodes that she was presenting young people in that way, like in like incredibly flawed, but funny, and it's like trying to get through their lives, and like, you know, with all that humor and frankness. And it just felt like a breath of fresh air at that time. And like, obviously, and, you know, presenting characters that people might say are unlikable, but presenting the humanity in them. And like, you know, when she said, you know, we had written 4 episodes, the show was greenlit. This was in February. And then HBO said that they sent them to Lena and she'd read them overnight and wanted to meet us. And that just felt like a surreal moment for us, considering like, yeah, there's an interview of us on the internet from like 5 years ago saying that we love Lena Dunham. So it felt very strange for me sitting opposite her talking about our show. And she was just very, very collaborative. And like, she just said like, you know, I love these characters. I love these relationships. I don't understand this world because this is a world that you came from and I have really no experience of. But so if you help me with that, I'll help you with the other stuff. And she was very collaborative. We sat on set with her every day. She asked us questions about the world, about finance, and we just, it was a very good experience, actually.
Awesome. I loved the Only Way is Essex little gems you guys put in there. What other places, what other little British, I feel like, specific cultural, like, hidden gems did you guys incorporate?
There's maybe, I reckon there are 10 different British slang use for the word for terms used for drugs across the show. So there are quite a lot of Britishisms in that regard. I think I didn't realize until I watched it back quite how sweary the show is as well, which I think is a particularly British thing as well, and feels very true to that workplace. And then there are just loads of there are just loads of textural things that feel very much like Britain in 2020. The kind of after party in episode 4, Robert doing a nitrous oxide canister, which is very British. So yeah, I think and then actually one of the episodes itself is called Notting Hill. Episode 3 is called Notting Hill, which was a kind of nod to there's a line about a Richard Curtis movie. So I think we were always kind of, you know, with an American lead and American eyes and that fish out of water thing, we couldn't help but kind of, you know, right kind of, actually we even have some ADR around Harper, you know, speaking to Greg about, you know, what is this thing you call a sesh, you guys? And it's like there's quite a few things like that tucked into the show.
Love that. And last question, I wanted to know like how you guys as former colleagues have responded to this concept and like the show in general. Have you guys been in touch with people that you've worked with about what it's like that you guys are making a TV show about your experience?
Yeah, very much so.
I feel like they're all quite excited to see it, which is good. I mean, we took a few people who worked in the industry, continue to work in the industry, onto the set, and they were pretty flabbergasted by how real it felt, which is obviously really, really good. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's funny that Konrad said this the other day. It's like a lot of the people you ask and tell and mention it to who work in the industry assume it's about them, which is
like
more about
them.
Yeah, they said like, "Am I in it?"
Yeah.
You say, "Well, you know, maybe very, very, very subtly you're in it, but nothing that could get us in trouble."
That's awesome. I'm so excited for people to see this show. You guys did a great job with it, and I feel like it's about to cause some conversation, so it'll be fun.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you
great.
so much for
Thanks.
talking to me, y'all.